My name is Emily, and I learned the hard way that family help can come with paperwork you never signed. My sister said she was planning ahead for my child. She was, just not in the way I thought. If you've faced something similar, share your story in the comments. Sarah showed up 10 minutes after my last video call ended. My laptop was still warm, the calendar reminder blinking overdue, and my kid was on the living room floor lining up toy cars like it was serious work. The knock came without warning, sharp and familiar. When I opened the door, my sister stepped in with a thin folder tucked under her arm, smiling like she was doing me a favor. "I opened a savings account in your kid's name," she said, already moving toward the kitchen. "Just planning ahead." The word planning landed softly, like something I wasn't supposed to question. Sarah talked while setting the folder on the counter, explaining interest rates and future expenses, college, emergencies. She said I'd been busy lately. She said she handled it. While she spoke, my hand slid my laptop back open. The bank inbox loaded slower than usual. She mentioned a branch on South Lamar. I'd never set foot in that one. A second later, she corrected herself, saying she meant the downtown location. Account slipped out of her mouth, plural. Then she smoothed it over and said, account. The folder pages were clipped neatly, almost rehearsed. The confirmation letter inside wasn't addressed to my apartment. It was sent to her old house, the one she sold years ago. One page carried a signature date from weeks before my kid's birthday. I traced the line with my finger while she kept talking. "It's easier when their credit is clean," Sarah added, laughing like it was common sense. "Who signed for it?" I asked. She waved a hand and launched into a story about family responsibility and how Mom always trusted her with paperwork. My screen pinged. New activity. The subject line sat there, unread, glowing brighter than it should have. I stood, phone already in my palm. "I like planning," I said, stacking the folder back together. "I just prefer knowing what's being planned." Sarah's smile tightened. The kid looked up, asked if it was snack time. I told him to wait a minute. The call connected faster than expected. "Thank you for calling," the automated voice said. Sarah leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me. I walked down the hallway, past the open bedroom door, and stepped inside. The door closed behind me with a soft click as the representative came on the line. "I need to verify something," I said, lowering my voice. "There are accounts under my child's name." The rep asked for identification, asked for dates, asked if the child was present. Papers rustled somewhere on her end. The questions kept coming, precise and polite, until one of them made my stomach go still. "For security reasons," she said, "we need to confirm whether these accounts were authorized." I stared at the closet door while she waited for my answer. The next morning, everyone was already seated when I arrived at my mother's house. Plates clinked, coffee poured, chairs scraped. Sarah sat closest to Mom, talking easily, like nothing had happened the night before. She didn't look at me at first. "She's just worried about the kid," my aunt said, nodding toward Sarah as I took a seat. "Someone has to think ahead." Sarah picked up the thread smoothly. "I saw how much Emily has on her plate," she said, "so I stepped in. That's what family does." No one asked me anything. Heads nodded. The conversation moved on, circling around how complicated money had become, how kids needed advantages early. When I tried to speak, Mom touched my arm lightly. "Let her finish," she said. "She's explaining." By the time breakfast ended, the version of events had settled. I was stressed. Sarah was helping. Someone joked that I'd always been dramatic about paperwork. Another voice chimed in with, "Family doesn't steal from family." No one said it directly to me, but no one needed to. At work, the calls didn't stop. I stepped out of meetings twice, then a third time. The bank number flashed on my phone while a coworker waited by the printer. "Everything okay?" she asked, not really asking. "You look distracted." The answer stayed stuck somewhere behind my teeth. I said I had a personal issue and walked toward the stairwell instead. The representative asked follow-up questions, more verification, more notes, nothing definitive yet. Around noon, Sarah sent a group text. A screenshot filled the screen. "Balance positive, account name neat and official. Her caption was short. See? Safe. Replies rolled in fast. Thumbs up emojis. A heart from Mom. Someone wrote, "Told you." My phone buzzed again as I locked it and slid it face down on my desk. By mid-afternoon, the pressure felt organized. Calls paused. Emails waited. No one accused me outright, but the assumption was clear. If there was a problem, it had to be mine. I was the common denominator. Marcus met me after work at a cafe near the office. He didn't ask how I was holding up. He didn't offer reassurance. He pulled out a pen and set it next to my cup. "What do you actually have?" he asked. I opened my laptop and started dragging files onto the table. Email confirmations, PDFs, screenshots. The folder Sarah brought over sat between us. Marcus flipped through it slowly, stopping on the confirmation letter. "This address isn't yours," he said. "No," I replied. "It's hers." He nodded once. "And how many accounts?" The bank called back while we were there. The voice on the line sounded practiced, careful. "There are multiple accounts associated with your child's name," the rep said, "opened at different times." "That's not standard," Marcus said, leaning closer to hear. The rep continued, explaining the process, the review, the next steps. No accusations yet, just procedures, just options. When the call ended, Marcus closed the folder and pushed it back toward me. "Don't argue with her," he said. "Paper beats conversation every time." He stirred his coffee, then added, almost to himself, "Planning ahead usually involves permission." The phrase stuck, not because it was clever, but because it was plain. We sat there while I forwarded emails, saved voicemails, labeled files with dates instead of feelings. The work felt mechanical, which helped. Back at the office, another message came through from the bank. This one had a subject line that didn't soften anything. Action required. I opened it, scrolled, and saw the timeline laid out in bullet points. Verification needed. Decision pending. A clock started ticking the moment the email arrived. 72 hours. The choice was framed neutrally, but it wasn't. Signed to freeze the accounts or allow activity to continue while they reviewed. The email didn't mention family. It didn't mention intentions. It mentioned liability. Night settled over my apartment without ceremony. Files filled the dining table, my laptop humming as pages opened and closed. The kid was asleep. Emails stacked by date, not meaning. I moved through them methodically, clicking, saving, renaming, until one scan stopped me. The document was old, a power of attorney I had signed years earlier when Sarah offered to handle some paperwork while I was juggling work and childcare. My signature was there, clean and familiar. The scope paragraph wasn't. A line had been expanded, the language widened to include financial instruments I never remembered authorizing. It wasn't dramatic, it was precise. My phone buzzed, then again. "Why are you still calling the bank?" "Stop escalating this. Messy investigations affect kids." The messages came in bursts, polite at first, then sharper. Each one landed seconds apart, like she was watching something update in real time. I didn't reply. The folder grew thicker. Account numbers repeated. Dates overlapped. The plural she'd corrected herself on finally made sense. A confirmation email from months earlier matched the altered scope. Another showed a transfer pattern that didn't look like saving. It looked like movement. Small amounts, short gaps. I printed everything, the machine churning through paper until the tray emptied. "If this is family business," I said aloud, lining the pages, "it's getting a folder." The printer clicked off. My phone buzzed again. "Let's talk tomorrow." "At the bank. In person." I sent one message back. "Downtown branch. 10. Sleep didn't arrive. Morning came anyway. The lobby smelled like sanitizer and impatience. The security guard nodded as I checked in. At the counter, the teller smiled and asked me to wait. Sarah was already there. She stood near the manager's office, leaning in, voice low, hand gesturing like this was a routine check-in. The manager nodded, pen tapping against a clipboard. Neither of them looked surprised to see me. "Emily," Sarah said, straightening, "I was hoping you'd come." A staff member called my name. While walking toward the desk, my phone vibrated hard enough to feel through my palm. An alert banner slid across the screen. New transaction posted. The number was larger than the others. The timestamp was minutes ago. I need to report unauthorized activity, I said to the teller. Sarah's smile didn't move. The manager glanced between us, then asked me for identification. Papers slid across the desk. My folder followed. Sarah interrupted, explaining timelines, intentions, how things get misread. The teller listened, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Another alert flashed. A second transfer. Please pause all activity, I said. The manager raised a hand, asking for a moment. Sarah's voice tightened. This is unnecessary, she said. You're making this worse. The teller's screen reflected numbers changing. The manager stepped away to make a call. Sarah leaned closer. You don't understand how this works, she said. I do. The phone in my hand buzzed again. I didn't look this time. The teller returned, eyes serious now, and asked me to confirm my child's date of birth. The question cut through everything else. Yes, I said, that's correct. She nodded and typed. Somewhere behind us, a printer started up. The manager came back, carrying a thin packet, and placed it on the counter between us, while the teller asked for my signature and the alerts kept coming, one after another, as the pen hovered above the line. Sarah reached for the packet, stopped when the manager cleared his throat. Procedures, he said. The teller asked me to initial the margin, then asked again, slower. My phone vibrated, silenced on the counter. Another alert stacked. The manager read from the page, words like review and temporary and pending, repeating. Sarah started to speak, cut herself off, tried again. I signed where they pointed. The manager checked his watch, the teller held the pen out again, and Sarah stared at the screen as the alerts continued to arrive without anyone saying a word, while the clock above the desk kept moving. The waiting area had emptied out without anyone saying it should. A staff member asked us to sit. Another disappeared through a door that didn't stay open long enough to see where it led. Sarah chose the seat closest to the desk. Her posture suggested ownership. Mine stayed loose, hands flat on my thighs, phone face down. Marcus stood off to the side, not part of the meeting, not able to be. The manager returned with a folder thicker than before. He didn't ease into it. One of the accounts associated with your child's name has an outstanding short-term loan, he said. It's past due. The sentence landed and stayed there. Sarah spoke before anyone else could. That's why I stepped in, she said. She doesn't follow these things closely. Someone had to. The manager nodded slowly, eyes on the paper. This account is now flagged for potential fraud, he continued. Given the age of the account holder, we're required to escalate. That's dramatic, Sarah said. I'm the one managing things. I'm here every week. She turned to me, voice shifting. You know I handle finances better than you. You've admitted that. The word admitted echoed longer than it should have. Marcus shifted his weight. I didn't respond. The manager slid a document across the desk. As of now, he said, all related accounts are temporarily frozen. Related, I asked? Yes, he replied, yours included. My phone buzzed. The notification preview showed a declined transaction. Sarah inhaled sharply. That affects bills, she said. This is irresponsible. The manager didn't look up. It's standard procedure. Another staff member entered with a second folder. She placed it beside the first. The sound was heavier than it needed to be. Marcus leaned in slightly. This isn't a mistake, he said quietly. It's a pattern. Sarah ignored him. I've been acting as the practical guardian, she said to the manager. She works long hours. Someone had to keep things moving. The manager tapped a page. This authority traces back to a power of attorney. He turned the folder toward me. The scan sat there, my signature clean at the bottom, the expanded scope boxed in yellow. The same document from my table the night before. The same one I hadn't thought twice about signing at the time. We rely on what's provided, he said. This document authorizes the activity. Sarah crossed her arms, satisfied. "See," she said, "I told you." The staff member began explaining the review process, timelines, departments, what could and couldn't be accessed, words stacked on top of each other. Another alert buzzed against the desk. Marcus checked his watch. "This review could take weeks," the manager said, "possibly longer." Sarah nodded as if that settled it. "Good," she said, "then we can all calm down." The staff member slid a form toward me. "We'll need your signature to acknowledge the investigation," she said. "It doesn't imply fault, it just confirms receipt." The pen waited where she placed it. My name sat printed at the bottom of the page, blank line above it. Sarah leaned forward. "Sign it," she said. "Let them do their job." The manager watched without expression. Marcus stayed still. Another notification buzzed, then stopped. The room felt smaller, not because of noise, but because nothing else was allowed to happen until that line was filled. I picked up the pen. The weight surprised me. It felt heavier than the papers, heavier than the folder Sarah had carried in so casually. The staff member pointed to the line again. Patient. Practiced. The tip hovered. A pause stretched, long enough for the manager to clear his throat. "Take your time," he said. The pen touched the paper, then lifted. I set it down beside the form instead of signing. The staff member looked up, waiting for instruction. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. The manager adjusted his glasses. "We can step away if you need," he said. The kitchen light stayed on long after the rest of the apartment went dark. Paper covered the table in uneven stacks, edges no longer pretending to be neat. The kids' door was closed, nightlight spilling a thin line across the hall. Nothing else moved. The unsigned form from the bank sat on top of everything, creased from being folded and unfolded too many times. I didn't reread it. Instead, the older document lay open beneath it, the power of attorney. The signature at the bottom looked calm, confident, like someone who wanted a task off her list. That was the problem. Speed had always felt responsible. Signing quickly meant fewer delays, fewer questions, fewer awkward moments where family help turned into a debate. Sarah offered, I agreed, everyone moved on. That was the pattern, and it had worked until it didn't. The pen rested near my hand, the same one from the bank, brought home without noticing. I picked it up, set it down, moved papers aside. Dates lined up in a way that made the sequence impossible to ignore. What I thought was trust had been convenience. What I called flexibility was absence. A text from Sarah appeared, then vanished before I could read it fully. Another followed. "We can fix this. You're making it bigger than it is." The messages stayed unanswered. A notification chimed as an email landed from Marcus. "Internal Fraud Review Unit," the subject line read. The message was short. "This is the group that handles misuse involving minors," he wrote. "They don't negotiate. Red line issue." Red line. The phrase felt clinical, almost comforting. It meant the situation didn't care about intentions or explanations. It cared about rules that didn't bend for family. The table shifted as I slid one stack aside and started another. This one was different. Everything tied to my child went there. Birth certificate copy, Social Security letter, bank correspondence. Each page stood on its own, separate from the rest of the mess Sarah had folded around it. That separation mattered, not emotionally, structurally. The power of attorney went into a separate envelope, labeled by date, not blame. The bank alerts followed, printed and highlighted where amounts repeated. No commentary, no narrative, just sequence. Another message buzzed in. "Mom's upset," Sarah wrote. "You're scaring her." The words sat there, trying to pull the focus sideways. They didn't get an answer. Instead, I forwarded Marcus's email to a new address and opened a blank message. The cursor blinked, waiting. My name filled the sender line. The recipient line took longer. When it did, it stayed. Internal Fraud Review Unit. The room felt smaller as soon as the address locked in. That was the point of no return everyone warns about but rarely defines. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't come with a sound. It came with clarity. The subject line stayed plain: unauthorized use of minor's identity. The body followed the same rule: facts only, dates, account numbers, attachments listed in order, the power of attorney noted without commentary, the request stated without apology. A pause came before attaching the final file. The unsigned acknowledgement form hovered on the screen. It didn't belong here yet. It stayed out. Another email arrived from the bank, automated this time, reminding me of pending verification. The 72-hour window still counted down. That clock had nothing to do with family either. The kids shifted in the other room, rolled over, went still again. The sound anchored everything. This wasn't about proving anything to anyone who'd already chosen a side. It wasn't about clearing my name or correcting a story. It was about stopping the damage where it mattered. The email sat ready, attachments loaded. The cursor blinked once more, steady, indifferent. A final message from Marcus appeared. "Once you send it, it moves fast," he wrote. "Be ready." The button didn't look different from any other. Blue, rectangular, ordinary. I clicked it. The conference room sat at the center of the building, sealed off from windows and distractions. A long table, 4 chairs, a pitcher of water no one touched. 2 investigators introduced themselves by last name only and slid folders across the table. "We've completed a preliminary review," one said. "There are additional parties involved." They didn't say Sarah's name at first. They said procedures, guidance, patterns. A credit officer appeared in the paperwork, someone assigned to the same branches over multiple years. Notes showed explanations given, steps outlined, approvals fast-tracked. This wasn't improvised, the investigator said. It was facilitated. The mail issue came up next. Letters sent to Sarah's former address weren't clerical errors. The routing matched instructions on file. Each change aligned with account openings. The timing chart followed. Then the losses. A column of dates matched months when Sarah's personal accounts dipped. Shortfalls bridged by short-term loans. Paid back quickly. Rolled again. The account under my child's name showed up as one node among many. "Your child's accounts were used for liquidity," the investigator said, "not savings." Sarah's response arrived before the meeting ended. A complaint filed with the bank accused me of harassment, interference, destabilizing family finances. The tone was professional. The allegations were vague. It worked. Several documents I'd submitted were marked pending verification, access restricted until sources were confirmed. The investigators explained this without apology. "We need time," one said, "and cooperation." Marcus texted from the hallway. "This is bigger," he wrote. "Stay steady." The investigators added that while reviews continued, certain permissions remained valid. Existing authorizations couldn't be nullified immediately. Sarah retained limited access under prior instruments. "That's temporary," the investigator said, "but it's real." Questions followed. Dates confirmed. Copies requested again. I answered, corrected, provided. The rhythm felt procedural, not personal. When it ended, the folders closed together. In the hallway, the air moved again. My phone vibrated nonstop. Missed calls stacked. Messages from family, then from Sarah, then from unknown numbers. A calendar reminder chimed uselessly. One investigator stepped out and lowered his voice. "We've seen this structure before," he said. "It relies on delay." He returned to the room, leaving me there with the noise. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, then disappeared. Another message arrived claiming cooperation, then warning of consequences. The elevator doors opened. I didn't step in. Instead, the phone kept buzzing as permissions still existed somewhere, papers still carried weight, and time stretched while reviews took shape beyond my reach. I paused near the water fountain, rereading the investigator's business card, then slipped it into my wallet. A security guard passed, glanced, moved on. The building hummed with ordinary work. A voicemail from the bank played automatically. It referenced holds, timelines, expectations. Another message followed from Sarah, carefully worded, advising cooperation and patience. The contrast felt deliberate. I typed a short reply to the investigators, attaching a supplemental index and timestamps they requested. The send confirmation appeared. The phone vibrated again. Marcus called. "Don't fill the silence," he said. "Let the process grind." I thanked him and ended the call. The elevator chimed again. This time, I stepped inside, doors closing as notifications continued to stack, each one proof that the paperwork still mattered, and the waiting had only started. The car descended slowly. My reflection flickered in the metal doors. When they opened, the lobby noise returned, phones ringing, people laughing, business continuing. Outside, my phone buzzed again and again as I walked toward the exit without answering, already counting what would need to be documented next. Across the street, traffic paused at the light. I waited with it, reading another alert about provisional access that still existed, thinking in steps and checklists, moving forward because standing still was no longer an option. The phone buzzed once more. I didn't stop walking. The review would take time, and time was now part of the cost. It sat there, unavoidable, stretching ahead, while the building fell behind me and the day kept moving. I checked the time, silenced the phone, and headed home, aware that nothing simple would return quickly. The room was booked under the bank's name, not my mother's. That mattered. 2 attorneys sat at one end, folders already open. A compliance officer adjusted her glasses. Sarah arrived last, handbag on the table before she sat, posture set like this was another meeting she could manage. Everyone waited for someone to speak. I didn't rush it. "I asked for this session to be recorded," I said. "That's fine," the compliance officer replied. "It already is." No one objected. That told me enough. I slid the first folder across the table. It stopped in front of the attorneys. "This is the identity verification packet," I said. "It confirms the accounts were opened under a minor's name." Sarah glanced at it and smiled. "I was just helping," she said. "Everything was safe." I didn't respond. The second folder followed the first, placed directly beside it. "These are the transaction logs," I said, sorted by date. The attorney flipped pages, numbers repeated, amounts moved in and out in tight windows. Sarah leaned back. "That doesn't show intent," she said. "It shows responsibility." The compliance officer raised a hand. "Please wait." The third folder landed heavier. "These are internal records," I said. "Branch notes, staff guidance." Sarah's smile faltered. "That's confidential." The attorney looked up. "They were provided under subpoena." Sarah shifted, fingers tightening around the strap of her bag. "I was following advice," she said. "I didn't do anything illegal." The compliance officer spoke evenly. "The bank has completed its review." She read from the page without emphasis. "The use of a minor's identity to secure short-term liquidity violates internal policy and federal law." Silence followed. No one rushed to fill it. "This is what planning looks like on paper," I said. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. The attorney on her side whispered something she didn't hear. The compliance officer continued. "All associated accounts will be frozen effective immediately. A criminal investigation has been opened." Sarah's hand clenched the bag strap until the leather creased. She didn't look at me. No one did. The compliance officer slid one final document forward, this one stamped and signed. "You'll receive copies," she said. "Next steps will be communicated directly." Chairs moved, papers stacked. The recording light stayed on as the meeting ended, no one offering small talk. Sarah remained seated until the room emptied, then stood slowly, bag still tight in her grip, eyes fixed on the table where the folders had been. Chapter 8. No More Access. A few weeks later, the bank hallway felt ordinary again. People waited, checked phones, argued quietly with screens. No one looked at Sarah when she walked past the reception desk. Her name no longer opened doors. It didn't unlock conversations either. A compliance officer met me with a thin envelope and a practiced nod. "All access has been revoked," she said, "effective immediately." The words landed cleanly. No conditions, no qualifiers. Down the hall, Sarah stood near the elevators, purse held tight, eyes fixed on the floor numbers as they changed. When the doors opened, she stepped in alone. No one followed. No one asked questions. The doors closed, and that was it. Family meetings changed after that. When money came up, no one turned to Sarah. There were pauses instead, followed by awkward redirects. Explanations stopped being volunteered. If someone needed clarity, they asked the bank or a lawyer, or didn't ask at all. Sarah tried once to speak to me after a meeting. "We should talk," she said. "There's nothing left to coordinate," I replied. That was the end of it. There was no shouting, no apology tour. I didn't pursue anything beyond what protected my child. The investigation moved forward on its own path. For my part, distance did the rest. The weeks that followed were full of small confirmations. Letters arrived, each one thinner than the last. Phone calls shortened. Forms stopped requiring follow-up. What had felt endless before began to compress into check marks and closed loops. When a representative asked if I needed additional coverage or monitoring, the answer stayed the same. Everything necessary was already in place. There were moments when silence felt unfamiliar. No one checking in, no one redirecting decisions. The absence wasn't empty, it was functional. Time returned to neutral, and routines filled the space without commentary or supervision. The new apartment came with fewer echoes. Boxes lined the walls for a week before I bothered to unpack them. A folding table served as a desk, while paperwork followed me one last time. Every document tied to my child was closed, sealed, confirmed. Alerts were reset, emergency contacts updated, permissions narrowed until only one name remained: mine. The bank confirmed it twice, then once more in writing. The file numbers changed. Old access points disappeared. When I asked if anything else was needed, the answer stayed consistent: no. That word mattered more than any reassurance. Emails accumulated during the process, summaries, attachments, notices. I dragged them into a single folder and labeled it without much thought: Family Event, Austin. The name made sense in a dry way. It was accurate. It didn't invite interpretation. A call from my mother came through one evening. Her voice sounded tired. "I wish this hadn't happened," she said. "So do I replied. She didn't ask me to fix it. She didn't ask me to soften anything. That felt like its own boundary finally holding. The kid adjusted quickly to the new place. Different light, different routine. The important parts stayed the same. Homework at the table, shoes kicked off by the door, bedtime questions that had nothing to do with banks or signatures. Packing finished faster than expected. Fewer things felt essential now. What stayed earned its place by usefulness, not history, and that shift made decisions surprisingly simple. On the last night, I carried a small bowl of keys to the table. The old house key sat on top, worn smooth from years of use. I set it down and slid it aside. There was no ceremony to it, just placement. The lock on the door turned with a solid click. The sound settled instead of echoing. I stood there for a moment, listening to the normal noise of the building, the distant traffic, the ordinary life continuing on its schedule. My phone buzzed once with a final automated update from the bank. Account secured, review ongoing, no action required. I set the phone face down and turned off the kitchen light. The keys stayed where they were. The door stayed locked. Nothing waited on the other side anymore. For anyone, at this address, at all.